Okay, looks like we're streaming. We are live. Great. Well, hello, everyone. I'm so glad that you can stop by, take some time, and join me in this discussion. My name is Kimberly Walden. I'm an attorney with Atlanta Legal Aid. I'm a staff attorney specifically, and I work in our Clayton and South Fulton office. Again, I'm so happy that you can join us. And for those of you who can't join us yet, but will watch this later, thank you for joining. Um, just so that I can give you a brief spiel, Atlanta Legal Aid is a nonprofit law firm. We provide free civil legal services to low-income residents in metro Atlanta counties, specifically Clayton County, Cobb County, DeKalb County, Fulton, and Gwinnett. So if you are in need of any kind of civil legal services, specifically legal services that we provide are housing law, if you're facing an eviction or other types of housing issues, we can help. Family law cases, ranging from temporary protective orders, which we'll discuss a little bit later, divorce, custody issues, legitimations, child support issues, we can assist with those. We also help with education issues, consumer legal issues, sometimes with estate law, and certainly with public benefits cases like food stamps, Social Security problems. So we help with those type of civil legal issues. We do not do criminal law. We generally will direct you to the Atlanta Bar Lawyer Referral Service for that. But we will be able to help with civil legal issues. Before we get started with this presentation, I'm just going to give you guys some quick disclaimers. This presentation is specifically Georgia law related, and it's going to be a general presentation about Georgia law. So if you are viewing from a different state, this is probably not going to be entirely applicable, but feel free to stay and maybe learn some stuff about Georgia law. If you have specific issues in your own particular case, it may be that this presentation isn't going to answer those, and I would encourage you to reach out to legal aid and get some assistance from us there. Or again, the Atlanta Bar Lawyer Referral Service Program is also a great resource for different attorneys as well. For specific legal advice, again, what you will need is to contact an attorney for your individual consultations and to figure out how to proceed in your own personal cases. And I will also make mention that this presentation does not create an attorney-client relationship. Again, reach out to an attorney if you have any specific legal issues that you need some assistance with. So with that said, enough of the general disclaimers. Let's kind of jump into this discussion. We are here to talk about domestic violence. We're here to talk about resources that are out there, especially in Metro Atlanta, to help people get out of these situations. I will say that a lot of this conversation may be gendered. It is usually women who are impacted more so as victims and survivors of domestic violence. So it may be that my conversation is gendered. I may use she, hers, but that is not to say that men, non-binary folks and individuals are not capable of being victims. It's just language I will typically use. I will also probably interchange my language as well. I may refer to a victim as a survivor, survivor as a victim. I could also refer to an abuser as a perpetrator. I will be careful in doing that as much as possible, but just know that that's probably going to be the language that I'm going to use to describe these different concepts. So what is domestic violence? What do we all consider it to be? What is it actually legally? domestic violence has a number of terms, rather. Intimate partner violence is one of those terms, family violence, dating abuse, relationship abuse. There's various ways that we refer to domestic violence colloquially and even in the legal field. What we're ultimately getting at and what domestic violence truly is an issue of power and control. There is somebody in a relationship that has the power and wants to continue to maintain that power, and there's someone who is also being controlled. And what we're looking at is, how is that dynamic becoming abusive? There are many, many tactics that abusers will use to inflict their power and control onto somebody. Those things can be intimidation, emotional abuse, using isolation, preventing somebody from being with their family and friends, minimizing, denying, and blaming somebody for certain behavior, using children to manipulate and encourage a situation. Frequently, you'll see people who will say that you cannot leave, or you can leave, but I'm keeping the children. Male privilege, the use of male privilege is also something that you see in domestic violence, in gendered roles. And that is not to say that every relationship that has a gender role component to it is abusive. But what you can see is, if there's somebody in that relationship, if there is a male person in that relationship who is using his male privilege to control and overcome and overpower the other person in the relationship, then you could be looking at an abusive situation. We're also talking about coercion and threats. Frequently, you will have people, if somebody decides to leave, the threat of committing suicide is a way to keep that person there. Media and the news and what we watch on Netflix, Hulu, all of those streaming services will tell us that domestic violence frequently looks like physical abuse. And sure, of course it does, but that is not the only type of abuse that is out there. People are financially abused. There may be somebody in the home who's controlling the pocket and the purse, and you don't have access to that money. So leaving and finding assistance may be difficult. Mental abuse, emotional abuse, even spiritual abuse are all valid forms of domestic violence and could mean that you are in an abusive situation. Now, that's the broad version of what domestic violence is, but Georgia in particular defines it in a very particular way. In order to get a temporary protective order, in order to have somebody prosecuted for domestic violence, it is generally defined in a specific way. Georgia law will define domestic violence as either one, any felony, or two, it can be either battery, simple battery, assault, simple assault, stalking, unlawful restraint, criminal damage to property, which is damaging property that is $500 and above, and criminal trespass, which could be damaging property that's $500 or less. It also could be if you're, trespassing on somebody's property in the traditional way that we think of that. So Georgia law, as we see, doesn't really incorporate all the types of abuse that people are experiencing, but that doesn't make it any less abusive if you are in those situations. And I think specifically of instances of financial abuse, somebody controlling the purse strings may not be a criminal act that Georgia would define as a family violence issue or a domestic violence issue, but it certainly still can be an abusive situation that we can all recognize is an abusive situation. So once you've kind of understood what it is that domestic violence is, the next step is determining how do you get out of this and how do you help family and friends or other loved ones get out of these situations. It's super important to note that leaving a domestic violence situation is one of the most dangerous times that a victim will experience. It is one of the most dangerous times because what's ultimately happening is the victim, that survivor at that point, is saying, I've had enough, I am leaving, I'm cutting off this control and power that you have over me. And abusers do not want that. They need and they live off, they feed off of having that control of power. And once that is being threatened, then they may escalate. So it is a very dangerous time to leave. And that's partly why many people do not leave. What you're talking about is people have been isolated for a significant amount of time. They may not have anywhere to go. They may not have family and friends to be able to help them when they do leave. You're also talking about your children's safety. What if I don't have people that I can rely on when I'm deciding to leave this situation, and I have children that I need to take care of and provide for when I do leave? You may not have financial resources to be able to take care of your children when you leave as well. There's also what I kind of intimated at before is that there's a fear of retaliation, that this person is going to stop everything that they can do to prevent you from leaving. The fear of being killed, physical harm, threats of suicide, which I mentioned earlier. Again, lack of resources. They may not have the finances to be able to leave. They may not have internet services or transportation services. You also have people who just hope that the person that they're in this relationship with is going to get better, that they're going to do better, that this may have been a one-off situation, or they've made these promises that they're going to do better. And we have this inclination to want to believe those that we care about. There's also concepts of race that we need to talk about too. Many Black women who are in relationships with other Black men may feel fearful for themselves of calling the police to get some assistance because of the tumultuous nature that Black folks are having with the police in this day and age, and frankly, for centuries. But race can play a component into that. Do you want to watch somebody you love and care about be victimized potentially by a police interaction, or would you rather suffer the consequences of being abused by this person? That is something to consider. Or again, if you're a person of color, is calling the police going to put me even more at risk? Am I going to be abused by both of these people? You're also talking about cultural, religious, other family pressures to stay together. And then other reasons that people may stay is because they, feel ashamed that all of this is happening. So with all of that, there are so many reasons that people continue to be in these domestic relations or domestic violence situations and continue to be victimized by people. So the most important thing to do when somebody is ready to leave or they're considering leaving, if you are the person, or if it is a family or friend who is ready to go and there's a conversation, you're having these conversations, the most important thing to do is figure out what is the safest way to leave. And what we're going to do is send some resources from the Georgia Coalition Against Domestic Violence. They have some resources for safety planning. The National Domestic Violence Hotline also has some resources for that. They have an interactive tool people can use to figure out what is the safest thing I can do to leave out of this situation. Also, the Partnership Against Domestic Violence has a worksheet that people can use to kind of think through everything and make that assessment of what is the best thing that I can do and what things do I need to consider in order to leave the situation as safely as possible. And as we're talking about safety planning and leaving, sometimes creating a safety plan for staying is important. Figuring out where to put certain belongings in your home, figuring out how to escape the house, figuring out are there locks in the doors to make sure that if there is a situation that's escalating, that maybe you can barricade yourself in a door, maybe you can put phones in different places or have access to some sort of line of communication to a friend, family member, even potentially police. There are so many considerations that go into safety planning, and it is incredibly particular to each person what is going to be the safest way for you to continue to be alive, continue to not sustain any injuries, and also in leaving. So I would encourage you guys to look through those resources, look at safety plans, look at the questionnaires that are available out there. And I have only included some of the different type of safety planning websites. There are so many. So I would encourage you guys to look through those websites to figure out the best course of action if you need any safety planning resources. So one of the ways that people tend to remain safe or get some assistance is by filing for a temporary protective order. And I'm going to spend much of my time today talking about the temporary protective order process, because at Legal Aid, we are here to help with that process in every way possible. My work with Legal Aid is primarily in assisting people with filing for temporary protective orders and navigating them through that process. So first, what I'll do is tell you guys the types of temporary protective orders there are here in Georgia. There are 4. There's one new one, and I'll talk about that in just a second. So there is a family violence temporary protective order. There is a stalking temporary protective order. The new one is a dating violence temporary protective order. And there's also an employer temporary protective order. Now, the first 3 I'm going to talk about in a little more detail. I personally have not completed or seen an employer protective order. They do exist, but I won't be able to talk about that with any kind of specificity. So a family violence temporary protective order requires 3 things. You need to prove 3 things in court. You need to show that you have a particular type of relationship. You need to show that there has been an act of family violence that has occurred, and that you need protection from future violence. So what is the type of relationship? It is limited. Not everyone can get a family violence temporary protective order. You need to be a past or present spouse. You either need to have been married to the particular person you need the protective order against, or be currently married to them. People who have children together would qualify. Parents and children, if it is a child trying to get a protective order against a parent or a parent against their child. Step parents and stepchildren can get the protective order. Foster parents and foster children. And broadly, other people who have lived together formerly or who are currently living together can also get that type of a protective order. And like I said, the next thing that you need to show is that there was a family violence act that occurred. And like I said earlier, in Georgia law, family violence is defined as any felony or, again, battery, simple battery, assault, simple assault, stalking, criminal trespass, criminal damage to property, and I'm missing one. What is that? It is unlawful restraint. So those are the types of family violence acts that would qualify somebody to get a temporary protective order. The benefits that come with this type of a protective order is number one, you get the main thing that you'll probably want is for this person to not have any contact with you, and certainly stop this type of violent contact that they are having with you. You can also obtain other types of orders, considering the types of relationships these people are in, right? So if you are living in a home together, you may be able to get an order from the court saying that that person has to leave that home and that you get exclusive use and possession of that home. You may also get orders related to child support, related to visitation. A huge component of these protective orders is that the respondent or the person who the protective order is supposed to be against will not be able to have any firearm. That is off the table for that person. They can't have them. And there's also a restorative justice component, as I would interpret it, to these protective orders, in that the court is supposed to and must order family violence intervention program so that people can work through the necessary coursework so that they can stop the behavior and get to the root of what their behavior is. So there's a ton of benefits that come with having a family violence protective order, including those financial ones like child support, maybe sometimes spousal support. And certainly if there's utilities being shared, you can have the court say they can't cut anything off. So that is a family violence protective order. The next type, like I said, is a stalking temporary protective order. And you can get a stalking temporary protective order when a person commits the offense of stalking, which is following, placing under surveillance, or contacting another person at or about a place or places without the consent of the other person for the purpose of harassing and intimidating the other person. So I'm reading straight from the law on that. What this effectively means is that if somebody is constantly contacting you, if they are bothering you without any legitimate purpose, a stalking temporary protective order may be something that is on the table for you. So what you would need to first show is that an act of stalking did occur, which is what I was just reading, that somebody is constantly contacting you. It can't be just one time that they've contacted you and maybe said something threatening. It needs to be multiple times that they have done this. You will also need to show that you need protection from future violence and from this future communication that they're having with you. Unlike with a family violence protective order, a stalking protective order does not require a specific type of relationship. So a family violence protective order required, it'd be a spouse or somebody who has children, or people who have children together rather. This does not require that sort of relationship. So if there is some random person in the world who continues to contact you multiple times and you may have asked them to stop or you haven't, and they keep doing it, that could qualify you for a stalking temporary protective order. The next one, the dating violence temporary protective order, it is new. It became law on July 1st of 2021, so this year. And it kind of closes some of the gaps that a family violence protective order and a stalking protective order couldn't help. So if you wouldn't qualify for either one of those, a dating violence protective order may be something that you can apply for, and it could help you out. What you need to show for a dating violence protective order is that there is a dating relationship, that there has been an active dating violence, and again, that you need some protection for the potential of future violence. So what is a dating relationship? Well, it has a fairly complicated definition as I'll read it. A dating relationship means a committed romantic relationship characterized by a level of intimacy that is not associated with mere friendship or between persons in an ordinary business, social, or educational context. it does not require a sexual involvement. So what that could mean is, it's a boyfriend or girlfriend situation, or you guys are talking or dating, or however we colloquially explain what our relationships are before we're living with somebody or anything like that. So it can be a number of things. And I strongly suggest, if you think that this is a relationship that you may have, if you want a temporary protective order and this is the thing that you would qualify for, I would certainly suggest speaking with an attorney to make sure that you do qualify for this. So that is what a dating relationship is. Dating violence is effectively the same thing as what family violence is. It can be any felony. It can be, again, battery, simple battery assault, simple assault, stalking, unlawful restraint. The difference with a dating violence temporary protective order is that criminal damage to property and criminal trespass, those things are not incorporated into this law. So if that is the act of violence, you may not qualify for this type of temporary protective order. I will also note that a dating violence temporary protective order a person will qualify for this if they are currently pregnant with the person that they're filing against, or their child of the person that they're filing against. That is to say that the family violence temporary protective order would not be applicable to somebody in that situation. So if you are pregnant with the person that you are trying to file a temporary protective order against, the dating violence temporary protective order petition is the one that you're going to want to file. And like I said, the last temporary protective order is the employer protective order. I don't have much experience dealing with those, but generally what you need to show is that there is an employer-employee relationship that exists between the employer and the victim or survivor. And you'll also need to show that violence or the threat of violence against the employee, so that victim or survivor, could occur at that workplace. So that's generally what I can say about employer protective orders. This is a situation where, again, I would strongly encourage speaking with an attorney about your ability to get this type of a protective order. Lastly, I will mention minors can obtain temporary protective orders, but they cannot file it themselves. They will need an adult to file it on their behalf. And specifically, they can do this with family violence and stalking temporary protective orders. Whether or not they can do this with dating violence temporary protective orders is a bit of a question. So that is the nutshell on the types of temporary protective orders that are out there. That is a lot to say, temporary protective order, and I realize I keep saying it. So what I'm going to do is reduce that down to TPOs moving forward. So how is it that you get these TPO? There is a process by which this happens, and that's what I'll go through. So the first thing that you need to do is complete the petition for TPO. So you're either going to complete a petition for a family violence TPO, a stalking TPO, a dating violence TPO, or an employer TPO. What we have here is the link where the TPO forms can be found. What you'll see on this link is the TPO form for family violence and for stalking. There is not a form yet available for dating violence, but I'm sure that's coming soon. And again, if you need an employer protective order, I would suggest speaking with an attorney because they may be able to direct you to a good form to use for that. So the first thing that you'll need to do is complete those forms. And then what you're going to do is take them to a clerk's office in the county where the respondent lives to file it. You won't file it in your own county. the appropriate county to do it is where that person lives, because that county can make decisions related to this protective order and decisions about them. So you'll take it to that county for filing, and every county does it differently. Here in Clayton County, you can either make an appointment with the legal advocate that's working with the court to file the protective order. Sometimes they will accept protective orders or the petition for the TPO filed via email. So that is one way of doing it. Fulton County does it differently. Cobb County does it differently. DeKalb County, Gwinnett County, everybody does it a little bit differently. So what we've also included in the comments, I think I've been calling it the chat because I'm so used to Zoom, but what we'll also include in the comments is the links to these different counties and their instructions for filing for a temporary protective order and how you can accomplish doing that. Many of these links have contacts to legal advocates in that particular area who are directly related and can assist with this. And you will likely be guided to them for some assistance. So look through those websites. There are telephone numbers on there for some assistance, and they can tell you specifically what is expected of you when you try and file for a protective order in that particular county. But once you get the TPO filed, what will happen is a judge will review that paperwork. They may have a hearing where they're having a conversation with you, trying to get a full assessment about what has happened and what is the domestic violence that you are alleging happened. And based on that conversation and the review of your paperwork, or one or the other, they will issue what is called an ex parte temporary protective order if the violence rises to a level of the type of violence that would allow you to get a temporary protective order, or stalking rises to the level of stalking that would allow you to get the stalking TPO. On that ex parte order, if you are granted one, there will be another court date where you will go back to court and present evidence, and we'll get to that a little bit shortly. At this part of the process, the person that you are filing against will not be involved whatsoever. They don't know that this is happening, so that safety element is in place. If you are granted an ex parte protective order, which again, ex parte really just means that the other person's not there. If you're granted that type of a protective order, the next step is to get them served with the petition and the ex parte order. And again, that ex parte order has the date that you're going to have your next hearing. The way that you get those documents served is by having the local sheriff's department do it. If you're filing for a protective order in Clayton County, then as an example, then those documents will either be sent to the Clayton County Sheriff's Department, or you will give them to the Clayton County Sheriff's Department. Typically, they are sent over to the Sheriff's Department for service, and they will go to the person's door, knock on the door, and give them the papers. Once they are served, that protective order will then be effective. If they are not served with it, and this can be an issue, it frequently can be an issue, the order will not be effective, but what you can do is work with potentially a private process server to get the person served. If they have left the county recently, or if you know other places where they may be, you can send those documents occasionally to the Sheriff's Department in a different county. If they are not in the state for whatever reason, and you know where they may be out of state, you can generally send those documents to the Sheriff's Department or the police department in that different state. So that is the next step. Once you get your ex parte order, you need to make sure that it gets served. Well, the next thing is the big thing, the full hearing. This is where both of you will be present and be able to kind of explain to the judge what's going on and why you need the protective order. This is where you're going to want to present evidence. I encourage people to take photos of any injuries, any property damage. If you have videos are also good evidence. Police reports, obtaining the police reports from the particular counties that, or the particular police department that came to the scene. Any witnesses, if people have seen certain abuse, that is all good information. Any text messages or voicemails, this is all typical evidence that you will use to show why you need a protective order to a judge. The other person will have an opportunity to respond at that point. They frequently will say, no, they didn't do anything, that maybe we don't have the full story, and occasionally sometimes people will admit it, and just go ahead and consent to a temporary protective order. So that is what the full hearing will be. At the conclusion of that, the judge will make a decision whether or not they can extend that ex parte order. So that one that you got once you filed the TPO petition, they will decide if they can extend that ex parte order for another 12 months. Sometimes judges won't do it for 12 months. They may do it for 6 months, depending on a particular circumstance. But typically what we see is that the protective orders are extended for 12 months. And so for that 12-month amount of time, you may have various orders like we were talking about earlier with the family violence TPOs. It could be the case that there's child support awarded. There could be the case that there's some visitation arrangement. Could be that arrangement is no visitation whatsoever. But that order will be effective for 12 months or for the duration, whatever the judge decides. And you will have that order of protection. If somebody violates that order, there's a number of things that you can do to rectify the situation. It could be that you file a motion for contempt. It could be that you get in contact with the police and let them know that they have violated it. If somebody has violated a temporary protective order, they are subject to being arrested and charged with aggravated stalking. So that is also a benefit, especially of a family violence protective order and stalking protective order. If there is a violation and there's more stuff going on, what you can also do is potentially extend the TPO for longer. You will need to file a motion with the court to do that, and they can extend it for up to 3 years or make it permanent. So that could be an option that you speak with, an option for you to speak with an attorney about if you are feeling unsafe, even while the protective order is in place. So that is how you file to get a TPO. Again, as I've said multiple times, I strongly encourage speaking with attorneys who do this type of work. They can kind of navigate you through your personal circumstances and assist you with what you'll need to do in your particular case. I also encourage speaking with advocates. Their advocates are great resources to help you navigate through this situation. They can tell you safety planning resources. They can help you with safety planning, and they can also help you with completing the paperwork and let you know about different resources in your particular community. So I would encourage speaking with attorneys and advocates in your particular community. What I will just briefly discuss is the other types of legal issues that people may be going through if they are dealing with a domestic violence situation. It's not just temporary protective orders that we work with in order to address domestic violence. There are other types of cases that domestic violence has our radar on. Divorces are common. Frequently, if there's two spouses and there's a domestic violence situation, there may be some options for how you proceed with a divorce, considering the domestic violence. You may be encountering custody issues. And I'll quickly mention that in Georgia, if you have a child with somebody, if a mother has a child with a particular person or father, and they are not married, then in Georgia, what you have to do, or what that father specifically will need to do, is file what is called a petition for legitimation. What legitimation basically is saying you are the legitimate parent of this child. Signing the birth certificate is not enough. In Georgia, you have to file this type of case. And without that type of case, a father may not have any legal rights. The mother will have sole legal and physical custody until a legitimation is filed and until the court orders that the father is legitimated. So just so everybody's aware, if there are two people, mother and father, who are not married, mother has sole legal and physical custody. Father needs to file for legitimation if they want legal rights. Other custody issues that people may encounter are modification issues if they already had some sort of custody order. That is another thing. Folks in domestic violence situations also deal with housing issues, specifically related to potential evictions. The good thing in Georgia law that we have is that I think the consideration is that maybe there were two incomes coming into this household, and now because of the domestic violence, somebody has had to leave, so you may not be able to afford that property anymore and be able to maintain that lease anymore. So Georgia law allows people to break a lease. They need to give notice to their landlord 30 days before leaving in order to break the lease. And in order to do that, you need either a temporary protective order or a TPO that was effective, or a TPO that was ordered after a hearing, after you've presented evidence or there was an opportunity to present evidence. You need that type of TPO, or you can have a police report and an ex parte TPO. You can send those things to your landlord and they must allow you to terminate that lease. You can also have as a reminder, you can also have some sort of criminal TPO. It wouldn't be a TPO, but a CPO, I think is what they call them. Sometimes in criminal cases, before there's a final resolution, there may be a bond order with certain special conditions. That may be a type of order that allows you to stop the lease. And certainly if there's any sort of plea agreement or sentencing that says that this person needs to stay away from you, that may also be enough as well. Another issue that people have, especially if they're not moving forward with any type of legal action, if you decide, I don't really want to do a TPO, I really don't want to go through a court process, but you have children and you need some support, you can always open a case for child support. This is more so for folks who are not married. You probably need to go through the process of filing for divorce before you can get child support in that situation. But if you are not married, you can open a case with the Department of Child Support Services, and we'll put that link to opening that case in the comment section. And that way, if you're like, I don't want to go through the effort, it's too much emotionally or too much just generally for you to go through that effort of going through any type of court case, you can at least find some resolution and getting some child support by opening a case with the Department of Child Support Services. And lastly, what I'll say is that there are some things to think about related to immigration. If you are a survivor of domestic violence and you help through with a criminal investigation or prosecution, you may qualify for a U visa. You can also petition under VAWA if you are an abused spouse or child of a U.S. citizen, lawful permanent resident, or an abused parent of a U.S. citizen. You can petition for lawful status and receive employment authorization and access to other types of public benefits under the Violence Against Women Act, VAWA. Another thing that you can potentially get is a T visa. If you're a survivor of sex or labor trafficking, human trafficking, you may be eligible for lawful status and employment authorization, other types of public benefits under the T visa. So those are other things to consider, other legal issues that you may have or friend or family member may have. If they do, I would, again, strongly encourage contacting an attorney, contacting legal aid, because we probably have some resources to be able to assist. We certainly do family law cases and can at least advise on your particular issue. I don't think I said earlier, well, I know I said that legal aid assists people, low-income individuals who are in need of civil legal assistance. What we do is go through a eligibility interview to make sure that you qualify for our services. So if you do, we can discuss your legal issues and figure out if we can potentially provide representation services or some brief services or advice to you. If you do not qualify for our services, we generally will give you Atlanta Lawyer Referral Service as an option for finding an attorney in the Metro Atlanta area. If you're not living in the Metro Atlanta area, Georgia Legal Services is a great organization that helps throughout the rest of Georgia. And I strongly suggest reaching out to them. What I am going to do is share my screen just briefly and answer some questions, because I think we have at least one question. But I'm going to share my screen and show you guys some different contact resources that are here in Metro Atlanta. So let's see if I can accomplish that with ease. Okay. There we go. So those are our resources. And let's see if I can look at the chat at the same time. I don't think I thought about that entirely well. I'm going to look at the chat because I can't see the chat while I'm sharing my screen. So I'm going to look at that and see if we have questions. What's the difference between a TPO and a restraining order? That's the first one we have. So there really is no difference. It's mostly a colloquial thing. Some states like California refer to temporary protective orders as domestic violence restraining orders. The goal of both things, of a TPO and a restraining order, is for that person to stay away from you. So if it's a restraining order in a different state, you may want to look at the requirements of that state. But there's really no difference between a TPO and a restraining order. And how do I know if my abuser has been served? That is a great question. What I frequently do is get in contact with the sheriff's department and let them know, hey, I have this temporary protective order out there, trying to see if the respondent in that case has been served. And what I'll frequently do is just give them the case number and they'll be able to look that up. I'm not entirely sure how different sheriff's departments are able to do that, but that is one way you can check to see if somebody has been served. Another way that you can do it is the sheriff's department or whomever is supposed to be serving the protective order needs to file an entry of service. So basically a proof that they did serve this person. So you may be able to get in contact with the clerk's office of whatever county that the case is in and say, hey, has this been filed? And that may let you know. The quickest way, like I said, is by calling the sheriff's department, because they may not file that proof of service immediately. But that another way is to get into contact with the clerk's office, and they may be able to tell you something. All right, so I think that's all the questions that we have right now. I'm going to share my screen this time. And I'll give you a moment to look through these different numbers. What you'll see is the brochure has our offices in alphabetical order. So you'll see Clayton County Resources first, then you'll see Cobb County Resources, then DeKalb County Resources, Fulton, and then Gwinnett. And there's different resources if you need immigration services. Yeah, so I'll leave this up. As you'll see on that next page, there's our Fulton County number, our Clayton County and South Fulton number, our DeKalb County number, our Cobb County number, and our Gwinnett County number. So if you do need any legal assistance, please feel free to call those numbers. We're happy to help. I know I certainly am. And I think what we'll do is put the Atlanta Legal Aid general website in the comments, as well as the website for Georgia Legal Services, and more information about domestic violence that's written on that website. Feel free to kind of peruse around on those websites. There's a lot of good information. There's lots of videos around, even on our Facebook account, there's lots of videos around. So feel free to look through that. If you were late to this party, or if you missed some of this information, this video will also be on the Facebook, so feel free to look at this again. And thank you guys for joining. I certainly appreciate it. I know that domestic violence is a tough topic to talk about. It can be emotionally taxing on people. So I hope that what you leave here with is good information that makes you feel secure, at least feel safer in the fact that there are some resources around, especially in Metro Atlanta where we are, and that there are some people who have the desire to want to help you sort through these situations and have a desire to help people navigate out of these situations. So, this may be tough material, but I hope you leave here with a breath of fresh air, knowing that these resources do exist. So thank you all. I'll stick around for like a couple more minutes since we're almost at 2. We're 5 minutes away from 2. So I'll stick around and see if there's anything else, any other questions. Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions, but I'll give you all a minute. I'll give you a minute. Okay, well, I won't make anybody continue to sit here and wait on any other questions. I think we are done. And again, I thank you guys so much for spending an hour with me and learning some information about domestic violence here in Metro Atlanta. All right, have a good day.